Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the last day of JNUC 2024. Hope everyone had a good time last night. Welcome to the session here, the Mac IBM approach to device migration. We have John and Simone joining us. Note, after the session is over, there'll be a quick Q&A. Just put your hand up. I'll rush. We want to get your voice and question on the video. So thank you very much. John, Simone.
Thank you. Oh,
good morning, everyone. I'm happy to see that there were so many people here. I expected a lot of you to be sleeping off the party last night. My name is Jonathan Crauer. I'm the engineering lead for the Mac at IBM program.
I'm Simone Martorelli. I'm senior software engineer for the Mac at IBM program.
So during the course of this presentation, we're going to kind of go over some common migration strategies that you may be using in your environment. We're going to talk about Migration Assistant and why maybe it's not the best fit for a managed device. We'll take a look at the IBM's journey to finding a solution that fits our needs. And then finally, we'll discuss how we intend to have the solution that we've built continue to work in the future. So within your environment, have you created a process for migrating data from old to new devices? Personal Mac migration is pretty straightforward. You know, Apple has a utility built right into the operating system, Migration Assistant. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. However, it's not really a great fit for managed devices and doesn't work as simply as it does on a consumer model. Some of these might look familiar to you. You may be using one or a combination of those in your environment. You have the option of booting a device as external storage. That can be fast for the transfer speed, but ultimately you're left with having to move the files back to where they're supposed to be after you're done. And then depending on the security posture of your environment, you might not even be able to mount an external volume. AirDrop is another option. It's similar. It's easy for the user to just move files over from one system to another. Then you're also left with the same thing where you have to move the files back, and again, you might not be able to use AirDrop. There are cloud storage options like Box or OneDrive. They're pretty good. They can sync a lot of the files that most users care about, so like documents, things like that. But it generally isn't configured to handle application settings and OS level settings. Backup solutions like Time Machine, Code 42, they offer a little bit more in the way of transferring what the old device looks like to the new, but depending on your environment, you know, how many devices that you're supporting, it may not just be feasible. Like there's, you know, the storage options that you have to maintain, things like that. If you're an old sysadmin like I am, you may have heard your employees back in the day saying that they would just email files to themselves. And so when they got their new device, they would just set up their mail account and then download whatever files that they want. I mean, that's certainly an option. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, though. So, and then, of course, you can do nothing, right? I think some of us have been in that position where you're just not ready to support it. And so you just kind of let the user figure it out themselves. So with all that said, let's talk about Migration Assistant. You know, it's a tool specifically built to handle this. So allowing Migration Assistant in a managed environment can pose multiple problems. So if it's done during Setup Assistant, these like an ADE enrolled device, then you run the risk of breaking the Jamf binary communication with your environment, and then that of course requires a remediation after the device gets back to the desktop. If you're allowing Migration Assistant after the device has been set up, so after they've created the user account, well, Migration Assistant is just going to create a brand new user account for you, and that is not MDM capable, which means that if you're deploying like user level configuration profiles, they're not going to get deployed to the device, again requiring a remediation. So we're talking re-enrolls, right? It's just kind of a pain. Migration Assistant handles a lot of like the OS customization that a user could apply to the system, which is great because then it kind of gives it the same look and feel that they would expect. But it doesn't handle third-party apps. So any data that you might want to also migrate, it's just going to bring the application over, not necessarily the settings. Same thing for any advanced customizations that they might be using. So if you have developers and they're heavily customizing their shell environment, they're going to have to rebuild all that stuff. And then the last thing is that once migration assistant is running, it's running until it's done. So if, again, you're in setup assistant, 80 enrolled, and this person is trying to transfer 200 gigs of software, well, it's stuck there. And that means that until it completes, it's never going to finish whatever your enrollment process is. If you're running it afterwards, it boots you into its own isolated mode, and then the device is functionally unusable. So in combination with some of the things that we covered earlier, education is often the stopgap for how you kind of handle migration within your environment. So creating documentation and best practices to educate your users, and then also working with your IT support so that when they call in, inevitably, they'll be able to help them find their files and make sure that everything got transferred the way that it works. But that's all, it's all very heavy. It requires a lot of user input. You can also encourage your employees to use any of your cloud storage solutions. I mentioned earlier that it'll help with getting most of their stuff over, but now they still have to reconfigure the device so that it feels like their old one. It doesn't really help, if they have to spend 2 hours trying to fix it, as I've heard. So within IBM, we looked at a whole host of third-party tools that are designed to help with this process, but none of them really seemed to fit. A few of the solutions were okay, but we kind of had concerns with the security of the data transfer, how the tool was written. Some of it was a little sketch, and so we were concerned. A lot of those products that we looked at, they featured very little customization, and so it didn't look like it was a tool that kind of fit with the rest of our own suite of things that IBMers kind of expect. Additionally, they don't really cover scenarios with which they aren't kind of built. So if it's expecting like a physical connection to a device, and we're in an environment where maybe we can't just provide a cable, or there's just no capability to do so, it didn't have any other ways to get the data off. And then, frankly, a lot of them were just really unfriendly. And so when we were testing them and trying to see how the process worked, we get weird errors, or it just didn't look right. It wasn't a really good user experience. And our employees kind of expect that, and so we didn't want to subject them to something that they have to try to figure out how to use. So we struggled with finding that something that would kind of work with our employees about the user experience that they expect. And we've engaged with vendors about this, primarily Jamf and Apple, to see if we can figure out some sort of a solution. We've had a lot of conversations with them, and there have been positive changes and updates to how a managed device will work under a migration strategy. It's been hard to get kind of a real solution that would work just as well as the consumer experience. So, of course, there's always the option to just pretend that there's nothing wrong, and at some point, maybe there'll be a solution that presents itself. Some of you might be aware that Nicolas Cage is our team spirit animal. We've tried to honor him as best as we can, and hope that he would come to our aid in our hour of need. Unfortunately, he's not returning our phone calls. So, with all that said, we as a team needed to do something. Our employees expect us to provide a solution, so we built it. It's called Mac IBM Data Shift. I'd like to introduce Simone to come out and show how it works.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, again. What is a Mac IBM Data Shift? It's a macOS application, of course, and we're going to see how does it works. On startup, this Mac IBM Data Shift immediately run some preliminary check in background. The first one is to check if it has the rights to access all the paths needed for the migration of files and application, and second check is that really works for our workflow. It's understand if it's running on a managed device, managed on a recognized MDM environment. Of course, the application needs to run on both devices, the new one and the old one. We're going to call it like this. I hope no one got offended by the fact that we use the old Macintosh icon to represent an old machine. Our engineering did, but it still allowed us to use it. So I hope there's our Apple friends in the audience that will not ambush us after the presentation. Once the user made this simple choice between it's the new Mac, it's the old Mac, it can just click on continue, and on the new Mac, the device will just tell the user, look, I set this device to be discoverable. This is the pairing code you must use on your old Mac to connect this one. On the old Mac, Mac IBM DataShift provide a list of devices nearby set to be discoverable. This means that they're running just Mac IBM DataShift in discovery mode. Each device will also present an icon that represents the technology used at that moment to connect this other device. The application supports wireless connection and the cable Thunderbolt connection. The user can select the device, click continue, and enter the pairing code, and if it's correct and is the correct device, the connection is established. Mac IBM DataShift provides to the user a couple of predefined migration options. A light option where only documents and desktop folder are migrated. A complete option where the entire user folder is migrated with the exception of the library folder where only application support folder and preferences folder are cherry-picked. All the applications are migrated in this option and also, of course, all the user preferences. The app provides also an advanced selection mode where the user can just cherry pick from his user folder which folder wants to migrate, which application he wants to migrate. Of course, as you might notice, we don't have a granular selection of user preferences at this time. Mac IBM DataShift, we're continuously iterating on it, improving it. But at this time, we still didn't finish to set up a good way to allow a granular selection of user preferences. Also, application migrated during the advanced selection with the advanced selection option will not migrate also the application support folder related to the that application, just because as for user preferences, we still don't have the satisfaction way to select those. For the purpose of the presentation, let's say that we selected the light option and we click on Start Migration. Mac IBM DataShift will want just to acknowledge a couple of things with the user before starting migration. The first thing is that, of course, both devices will be prevented to go to sleep mode during the migration. And the second one is that we hope the user doesn't interact with the files involved during the migration because this could lead to a possible data loss. This because the application doesn't lock the user in a single screen, in a single application view. The user can continue to interact with their Mac and install other applications from the store if they were not available yet on the old machine, and continue to work as soon as it doesn't work on files that are migrated currently. Once the user acknowledges this, the migration starts, and a simple view is shown to the user with a progress bar, with a progress %, and time to completion estimation. On the bottom left, there will be also a dynamic warning that is not shown in this case. If the application detects that the device on which is currently running is not connected to a power source, it will ask the user to connect it. This because we want to avoid data loss because the device is running out of battery. Once the migration of the data is completed, the Mac IBM DataShift on the old Mac can be closed because there the process is completed and it will just continue on the new Mac. We designed a couple of post-migration workflows that really fit our workflow. They're fully customizable in the meaning that you can skip, the admin can skip it in a certain period of time for any reason with just a custom setting deployed with the configuration profile. The first step is a check on the Apple ID login. Sometimes the user just missed this step during setup assistant and forgot that they didn't log in with the Apple ID, and they might wonder why I don't see my iCloud stuff synced with the Mac. So if the application, the Mac IBM datasheet doesn't detect the user logged in with their Apple ID, we'll just ask them to do so with a simple call to action that will redirect the user to the system preferences pane to log in with their Apple ID. Of course, the user can skip it if they did it on purpose and they don't want to. If the application detects that user preferences were migrated during the migration, the best way to allow macOS to pull all these user preferences, and the fastest way is just to reboot the device. So it will start a reboot, a restart countdown, 2-minute restart countdown, and of course the user can avoid to wait and just trigger it with the restart now. The last step is a Jamf inventory update. We designed a couple of ways to do it, and because we tried for the first one, then we found it a bit more invasive, and then we designed another one. The first one, that is this one, is the direct way. Basically, upon the click on run inventory update, the application will ask for the user Mac password and just trigger a sudo Jamf recon command. Of course, the application doesn't have the rights to run autonomously a privileged command, so it needs to ask to the user for the Mac password. We found this a bit invasive, so we found another way. In the final view, basically the Mac IBM datasheet will just run the Jamf inventory update, running app policy through a deep link to the self-service app. The policy only purpose is to run Jamf recon. In this case, we don't need to ask for the user Mac password. The application will just track the recon running in background, and when it's done, provide the user with the final view, where a small recap of what has just been done on their device is, and the process is completed, and the user can close the application as well on the new Mac. But how is it made, this beautiful Mac IBM datasheet? It's a native macOS application, completely written using Swift. We mainly use the Swift UI and combined frameworks for the UIs and for the event management. We use the network framework for device connection and communication. The connection itself is secured using TLS and a pre-shared key, the pairing code we've seen before. And we don't use any third-party library, so we don't need to worry about unexpected vulnerability coming from them. Of course, when you're working with the Swift UI as a developer, you want to use all the latest features of Swift UI. You know, every year at WWDC, they present some new cool features that most of the time set apart. They're available only on the latest OS. So you always need to find a good compromise between latest feature for development and old OS support, and we find a good one in macOS Monterey. So this is all about how does it work and how is it made. Now I'm going to give back the word to John to talk a bit about how we interact, how we included it in our workflow.
Thanks, Mani. So deployment through Jamf is relatively simple. We have a configuration profile that gets deployed to the device. It's what controls and manages the permissions and also the options that we have configured for it, along with a standard policy and self-service, just a package payload. So as part of our enrollment workflow, at the very end, we open self-service. I'm sure some of you are also doing the same thing. We force it to go to a specific category. As you can see in this screenshot, it's the welcome to Mac IBM. Within there are other links for either new IBMers or maybe employees that haven't set up a device in a long time. But we also have the Mac IBM data shift advertised there so that when they're ready to migrate, they can go ahead and download it and then walk through the process. So I can see all the excitement out there, and you're saying to yourself, this seems great, but how does this help me? We're releasing this software as open source. It's called IBM Data Shift. You'll be able to find the source code now and documentation, including a sample configuration profile. And we're also working on getting a precompiled version, similar to how we offer IBM Notifier, so that you can just deploy it immediately. You don't need to build it yourself. So as with all of our open source projects, you'll be able to file bug reports and feature requests, and we're really looking forward to seeing what you might suggest. There's definitely stuff that we've missed, and we're continually iterating on it. So as I said, we want to continue to make sure that this program fits the needs of not just us, but anybody that wants to use it, and to ensure that it continues to work on future versions of macOS. Some of the things that we're looking at adding are improved and expanded data integrity checks. We want to offer more customization options that are deployable through a config profile so that you can try to make it fit your program, so it doesn't necessarily look like ours. And then also additional options, like, for example, people might want to prevent their user from interacting with the device while migration is present. So, and with all of that, thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to crowd you. So before we get to the Q&A, we brought something to say thank you for joining us so early in the morning. And you may have noticed that we have some quotes that are placed throughout the presentation. We have a pair of oven mitts with Nick Cage's face on them. If you would like a pair of oven mitts with Nick Cage's face on them, if you can guess how many quotes that we had in our presentation, you can come and claim these. So, I mean, we can, if you raise your hand and shout it out.
Just shout it.
Nope.
No. Bit more? More? 11.
11 it is. So,
Please.
or we can hold it and give it to you afterwards if you don't mind. So I don't want to make you get up on stage and
I will leave
if
it
you don't
there.
want to. So, okay. So, questions? Go ahead. Or he'll bring the mic over.
Thank you for building and sharing.
Well, if you've used any of our other products, we like to make sure that everyone else gets to enjoy the fruits of our labor because we have the ability to do it, and so we want to make sure that we give back. I mean, it's important to us.
Yeah, and so from higher ed, I appreciate that. So if we give this tool to our users, our faculty will go, great, we can migrate this ourselves. Thank you so much, that's awesome. And when I'm done, I get a free old laptop because we can't make faculty do anything, at least from the tech side of things. I assume in your environment, you don't give the old laptop back, you don't work here anymore. How do you get the old one back?
So it's not really...
It's a workflow question.
Yeah, it is a workflow question, and it's not really our workflow. So we have, because we're IBM, there's a department for everything, and so there is a device department when a new device is shipped out to an employee to replace. They start getting nagged if they don't return their equipment, and then that nag goes to their manager, and then it continues to escalate until something happens. But we also have workflows in place to, like autonomously lock devices if it's required. Unfortunately, this app won't be able to help you with that, but that's kind of how we do it.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to ask if you had a workflow to break the old one after.
We do.
Do you guys, can this handle when the old short name and the new short name are different? Does that matter?
It
Or do
doesn't
they have to
really
be
work
this-
that
do
way,
they-
right? Because it's based off of the application itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's completely independent of whatever the device might be named.
Yeah.
So it seems like this is post-enrollment, that this is run by the user, right, via self-service. So what if they've already set up something like OneDrive? Like, how does it manage? Does it overwrite the documents folder? Like, what happened? Okay. So you've taken into account like cloud storage if they've already started syncing?
The Mac IBM datasheet just ignore cloud storage folders, so Dropbox, OneDrive, Box, this kind of stuff, iCloud, Cloud Drive. We just ignore it to not tamper with the synchronization.
Cool.
And you also brought up something, and yes, this is post-setup, but we're also exploring pre-setup. So we're hoping to have something available by next year.
So we got like 300 developers in our environment. They all have their own unique environments that they set up, the way they customize it. Folks use SDK-Man, Homebrew, other stuff that I'm not very familiar with, but I understand that it's very customizable and they kind of treat their environment like their baby. So when it comes down to upgrade their machines, they're kind of hesitant because they have it the way they want it. So that's kind of a challenge for us to get folks to upgrade to newer machines. How does this work with that and all those unique environments that's out there?
Yeah, I share your pain. You know, within IBM, we have so many different development teams running all these different environments. It's a nightmare to try to figure this out. That's part of our own exploration within the company, is offering it out and then them giving their feedback on what works and what doesn't. There are things that we are looking at, tracking Homebrew. And I mean, we do some of the advanced customizations so that at least the environment is there, but we might not necessarily install tooling for them, but we're also exploring that because we feel like that's important. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I hesitate to migrate my own device. So it's an ongoing process. And again, we want your feedback. If you try to use it and you find that there's a gap, let us know. Like, we want to try to build it so that it works for 90% or higher if we can.
A quick one, has this been tested and compatible with case-sensitive file system?
I don't think it matters, right?
I didn't get the question.
He's asking whether if the file system is case sensitive or not.
No.
I wouldn't be surprised if anybody in our environment does format their device like that, but we haven't heard any.
No.
Try it out.
So, yeah.
If it doesn't work, file a bug report, and we'll take a look.
It shouldn't matter.
Quick one here. I believe you said both machines had to be managed. They both needed a configuration profile, the same profile to make this work, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And then do you need administrative privileges under both accounts for the user to run this?
No, you do not.
Okay.
So the application is designed to run in the user space. Somebody had briefly mentioned it when we do this recon, we offer different options. So we run in an elevated environment, and we understand that not everybody does. So there is the option for having it run a self-service policy, which of course requires no elevation of privileges.
Hi, so a lot of times when we're replacing devices, because I'm in K-12, it's because the user has damaged their original device. So I'm looking and I'm seeing that the requirement would be that the old computer be logged in with the account that you're transitioning the information from, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I mean, I don't know of a good way to not require that, because how would the device know what really needs, especially in like shared environment, that kind of thing. I also wanted to mention the last comment about them being managed. We do offer an option that's configurable to migrate unmanaged devices. We want our devices to be managed to make sure that people aren't trying to migrate data from a managed device to their personal device, but you could potentially use Migration Assistant on personal devices if you wanted to. There's one right back there. Oh.
You mentioned the post-setup or pre-setup. In environments that have conditional access, all our networks are pretty much locked down unless you have that certificate. Would this also then support like the ad hoc normal Mac to Mac setup? You know, just plug two Ethernet cables in and boom.
I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time hearing you.
Excuse me. Last night's party was very loud. I was yelling a lot. But if you, for pre-setup, we have conditional access on all our network points. Does this also then support ad hoc Mac-to-Mac network setup?
I don't think so.
Why don't you come and talk to us after the session?
Yeah,
Maybe we
okay,
can.
because,
All right, thanks.
Don't feel comfortable to answer.
Right.
If this is supposed to be run by the user, if they run into issues, is there any kind of logging on the machine of what the issues were?
Yeah, the application saves a log file in the that the user can just check in the console or find it in the log folder. And we're improving also the logs, receiving feedbacks from the user. If they have some issue, we can improve it. There are different login level that you can increase it to debugging level that might be a bit heavy in size of the logs, but yeah, it logs it.
Thank you for this tool. We got a question. We got conditional access also in place. So end users need to register a Mac. How will this help us?
Yeah, why don't we have a conversation afterwards? And,
all right.
Want to make sure that we're fitting needs that we hadn't thought about. So, oh, right behind you. To your left.
Let me get one. I'm joking.
Can you talk about what mechanism is being used to do the actual copying? Is it rsync? Is it something native to the OS?
We use file manager library from Apple. Yeah.
I would like to say that we try to use as little of the OS as possible outside of the application. Like everything is as native as we can get. You know, we have to run a recon, right? Or to be able to access the policy, so that's a binary call. But, but for the most part, everything else built in. So, anybody else? Okay, well, thanks again.
Thank you.